Welcome to Two Angry Men, the newest podcast with Los Angeles Magazine's own Mark Geragos and TMZ's Harvey Levin, where the two get together and talk about the biggest legal stories of the day. Enjoy.
You got a Department of Justice that is trying to get Don Lemon. If a reporter cannot report what is going on of national importance, freedom of the press is dead. And when freedom of the press is dead, democracy dies. Welcome to the Two Angry Men podcast. If Don Lemon is convicted of this ridiculousness of reporting on a protest in a church, American democracy is dead. And Mark, that is not hyperbole. Rosa Parks did a simple thing on a bus, and it changed America. And I think there is huge significance to this case. If a reporter cannot report on what is going on of national importance and be there chronicling it, then freedom of the press is dead. And when freedom of the press is dead, democracy dies.
Let me tell you something. There is a ultimate irony here. If you saw the indictment, which was just unsealed as you and I are sitting here, literally, you will see that they've gone exactly on the same, and when they say you, the DOJ has indicted him on FACE Act and Klan Act, and this has precedence. Do you know where from? The precedence is an 11th Circuit case published within the last 45 days, argued, in fact, by Harvey Dillon, who's right under Pam Bondi on this indictment, and that was used by the Biden DOJ in prosecuting somebody for these violations.
For what? So, what did they do, Mark? What did they do?
In that case, there's a history, and it's cited in the opinion, if you read it, that the idea of praying or disrupting anything that's happening near an abortion clinic can be a violation of the FACE Act or the Klan Act. And the difference between the two, by the way, one is a misdemeanor. What they've done here, conspiracy to commit the misdemeanor gives you a felony. Don is facing legitimate time. Don is also represented very ably by Abby Lowell. And as we're taping this, is in detention. He's actually in custody.
So let me tell you why the case you mentioned has absolutely nothing to do with Don Lemon's case. That has to do with people blocking an abortion clinic and protesting and disrupting. Don Lemon, and look, I want to read this because it's so outrageous. This is so outrageous. So in this indictment, they say that Don Lemon began live streaming on his internet-based show. And the government, what he did was he took steps to maintain operational secrecy by reminding certain co-conspirators not to disclose the target. So what they're saying is that before the actual protest in the church, Don Lemon knew where these protesters were kind of doing their staging area and walked up to them and said, where's it going to be? Don't tell anybody. Guess why he said don't tell anybody? He said don't tell anybody because that's what a good reporter does. I have done this so many times.
I was going to say, Harvey, how many times have you said, promise me you won't reveal this. Promise me I've got an exclusive.
Yeah, exactly. That what Don Lemon wanted was an exclusive. So of course,
But let me tell you.
Hold on. Let me make my point so people understand it.
Sure.
That when Don Lemon is saying don't tell anybody, what he wants is exclusive video of the protest. When I used to do stories, I would sometimes tell a lawyer, look, are we getting this alone? Are you giving it to anybody else? Because
sometimes you do that with great frequency. In fact, there's a term for it. When a lawyer gives you something and says, I want it embargoed.
Yeah, but and even if it's not embargoes, I say to them, hey, let me break the story. So I don't want them telling everybody else. If I can get the exclusive video, that's not co-conspiring with the protesters. That's just being a good journalist. So this BS that Don Lemon was co-conspiring with them by finding out where they were going to protest. Duh, Mark. Of course he's going to want to know that because he needs to know where to go. This is
Now
ridiculous.
you've got the indictment sitting in front of you. For
Yeah.
people who may just be listening and not watching, you can see on the indictment they blacked out names. It looks like it's redacted. The blacked out names, if you read it in context, looks to me like somebody who was working as a production person with Don Lemon. Anakin, watch yourself. Branson, watch yourself, because it looks like the production
He's talking
are
about my team.
Yes, that's Harvey's team. Looks like, and my guess is they haven't been arrested yet, and they will. What they've done is they've indicted, what is it, 9 people. They've arrested a number of them. 3 of them, I think, already in Minnesota were arraigned. As we're taping this on Friday afternoon here in Los Angeles, literally 100 yards away from where I'm sitting, Don is in custody, and I believe I would be shocked if the U.S. Attorney's Office asks for detention. I think he'll be released.
Well,
this
of course he's
afternoon.
going to be released. Don, I want to focus, Mark, on Don right now because I think this is so important. Don Lemon, if you watch that video, Don Lemon was reporting inside. He was not protesting. There was nothing you could point to where Don was part of the protest. He was chronicling an issue of national interest. Now, whether or not the people who did disrupt violated the law, I think it's murkier. Don, to me, is so clear. And listen to how outrageous this is. So in this indictment, they say Lemon oppressed, threatened, and intimidated the church congregants and pastors by physically occupying most of the main aisle areas reserved for the parishioners. Are you kidding me? This is
Let me tell you. This
is made up crap. He didn't do that.
Let me tell you, as a practical matter, as somebody who does a fair share of federal criminal defense work, one of the biggest hurdles for Don is now going to be a magistrate previously rejected an arrest warrant for Don.
Right.
And remember that. The magistrate read pretty much sub and substance
same
what
thing.
is in the indictment.
Same thing. And it went to appeal, too. And the appellate court said, there's not evidence here to prosecute him. So they go to a grand jury.
First, it went
to the magistrate.
Then it appealed to an Article 3 judge, because you normally, when you have bail, you can get that right. The Article 3 judge said no. Went to the 8th Circuit. They said no. They went to the grand jury. Now the problem is most judges are not going to be able to summarily reject a grand jury indictment. And also, the federal law does not have source protection codified.
I hope it goes. I hope it goes to trial. I hope this goes to trial. I think it's great if the judge doesn't just summarily reject it, because if it goes to trial, this jury is going to say the DOJ is full of crap. That the idea of trying to nail Don Lemon because he's supposedly oppressing. Let me tell you how ridiculous this gets. It gets even. My blood is boiling from this complaint. Listen to this. Listen to this. Don Lemon stood in close proximity to the pastor in an attempt to oppress and intimidate him and physically obstructed his freedom while Lemon peppered him with questions. What? I mean, but just help me out. Just stick to the point here. The point is, how do you say Don Lemon walking up to the pastor and peppering him with questions is intimidation and all that other stuff, Mark? Just explain that.
If there is nothing else, this will not survive a motion to dismiss. However, my guess is, I haven't seen it. I don't think it's been unsealed. Under Rule 6E, they can't yet. My guess is there was more presented to a grand jury. Because as you said, on the face of it, if the indictment goes no farther than the arrest warrant affidavit did, then they've got a losing hand, they being the DOJ.
So why are they? So why are they doing it then, Mark? Why are they doing it?
What happened? It's clear to me what happened. He was arrested Thursday evening here in Los Angeles. For those who
he came for the
are
Grammys, he came for the
juries,
Grammys.
Right, but the grand jury in most jurisdiction meets on Thursdays. That's why so many guys get arrested or picked up Thursday night or Fridays. And my guess is when they could not get the arrest warrant to take him in and then file a complaint against him in Minnesota, they then picked him up in LA. I don't know if they knew he was here for the Grammys. I don't know if he was broadcasting, but nevertheless, they picked him up in LA. He's going to LA court. Abby Lowell, who is reportedly representing him, who was my co-counsel on Biden, Abby, and I haven't spoken to him, but Abby has a number of defense kind of gambits that he can use.
But Mark, I'm sorry.
Trying to keep this here. But understand, Don, you may get what you wish for. You may get a trial out of this.
But why is the Justice Department? Because I have a theory about this.
What's your theory?
Well, I will give you my theory. I just want to mention two other things. That while talking to the pastor, defendant Lemon stood so close to the pastor that Lemon caused the pastor's right hand to graze Lemon, who then admonished the pastor, "Please don't push me." That's a crime. That's part of
the other injury that they're alleging is that a woman took her children out the side door and then tripped, fell, and got injured, and so that's the other injury
that's
claiming.
That's not a daunting. Let me just give you one other one, and then I want to give you why I think.
But remember, hold on, Harvey. Don is in a conspiracy here. You can't parse it out.
What's the conspiracy? What's the conspiracy?
I'm telling you right now, just because he's getting hoisted on this particular petard, it doesn't mean that this isn't exactly what prosecutors do. This is precisely why you want prosecutors. The conspiracy is that he's in cahoots with the protesters to disrupt the service on grounds of a church that is private property. That is what they're going to argue.
Well, okay, and we'll get into why, but just one other thing, and then let's get into that. Defendant Lemon thanked one of the organizers for what he was doing and assured her that he was, quote, not saying what's going on. Okay, he's not saying what's going on for two reasons. One, a source, and two, he wants an exclusive. There's no cahoots.
Correct.
There's no cahoots. He is being a journalist.
And I have done this I understand, but there is no codified federal source protection.
Okay.
It's judicially made up.
Forget about sources. Don Lemon wanted an exclusive. He's not in cahoots. He is not in cahoots. He wants an exclusive. That is not in cahoots.
Let me tell you what part of the problem is. It's a conspiracy. I forget the name of the Supreme Court justice who said it, but it was something to the effect is that it's a favorite arrow in the quiver of lazy prosecutors. And conspiracy is used and is stretched beyond recognition. You don't have to know what any of your co-conspirators are doing as long as you commit an act.
How are they co-conspirators? They are there to protest. Don is there to report.
Right.
I have done this thousands of times in my career.
Hold on. What they're alleging is not that they were protesting, that they were on private property.
No,
the church is private property.
Mark, have you ever seen a no trespassing sign at a church? They welcome everybody. Hold on. Hold on.
Can I tell you something?
You are allowed to walk in a church. Anybody can walk in a church. Don Lemon has a right to walk in a church. If they tell him to leave, then maybe he has to leave. If they tell him when he's recording, but you are allowed to walk in a church, period.
Let me tell you something, Harvey. I was exactly where you are a week ago. I researched the issue after that arrest warrant was rejected by the magistrate because I believe, just as you are articulating, that the First Amendment, that this, whether it's freedom of association or to protest and or speech versus religion, that you could not parse that out. Guess what? The research is the current state of the law. I don't know that it's going to remain this way. I was surprised to learn that that's not necessarily the state of the law. I corrected myself.
What's the change? I can tell you, I've researched it too. If there is not a no trespassing sign and you are inviting everybody to go in, anybody, including the protesters, can go in. What they do inside may make a difference, but you are allowed in. It is not trespassing for Don Lemon or any of the protesters to walk in. What they do,
Right.
that might be problematic.
What they do, correct. And what they do, and what I'm saying is, and by the way, one of the other hurdles they're going to have is, by the way, Judge, if I go into your courtroom, a courtroom is open to the public. If I start screaming in the middle of the proceeding, basically, you're a bitch, blah, 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 whatever, no judge is going to allow you and say that that's your First Amendment right. That's going to be their argument. You can go into the church, but you don't get to disrupt the service. And they're going to say that he is in a conspiracy. They've already said it, and they've gotten an indictment that he's in a conspiracy with people who are going to go into that church and disrupt the religious service. And I would not be so sanguine about this current Supreme Court saying that that is not a problem. And I think there's case law that supports this, which is a difference, so that I don't get pilloried in the comments section. I'm not supporting this.
You kind of are. You kind of are because you are.
I'm just telling you what the law.
No,
is.
You're wrong. But you're wrong on the law. You're wrong on the law.
Tell me why I'm wrong.
You're wrong on the law.
Do you think you can go into a church and disrupt the service?
I didn't say that.
And that First Amendment covers you?
I didn't say that.
Is that what you're saying?
No.
What are you saying?
I agree with you on that point.
Do you think you can go into a courtroom and just disrupt the courtroom, and then a judge is going to just say, yeah, that's okay, that's not a direct contempt?
I agree with you that when you go into the church and you disrupt, you can certainly make an argument that you are denying somebody their constitutional right of religion. I agree with you on that. That maybe, and I don't know, but maybe that, hold on, let me just make the point. That argument sticks.
I've been interrupted. I'm waiting.
Maybe that argument sticks. But when you say Don Lemon is a co-conspirator with those people, you're just wrong. He wasn't a co-conspirator.
I'm not the grand jury.
Oh, hold on.
I'm not the grand jury. What I'm telling you is...
You know about grand juries.
Conspiracy...
You know what grand juries do.
Yes, but I'm telling you that I know what prosecutors do. And I know how the conspiracy law works. You don't have to know any more than the fact that there are protesters who are going to go into a church and purposely disrupt the proceeding so that they can live stream it and the religious service, to know that that will get you past a motion to dismiss in federal criminal court.
And this is where I think you are so wrong that I think you're right that the protesters are going to end up standing trial and may even be convicted. Don Lemon is not part of the protest. He is not a co-conspirator. I was a reporter in Los Angeles for 15 years, and I covered riots, I covered fires, I covered earthquakes, covered protests, I covered murders. I went inside the First AME church around the time of the riots. I was covering all of the demonstrations. To say that and this is where I want to get to the real point and the subversion of the First Amendment by the Trump administration, is the real point is that if you tell a reporter that they are not allowed to be there and chronicle what's going on If you tell reporters that by merely being there and chronicling it, that they're part of the, quote, conspiracy to disrupt, if you say,
Wait, I'm going to tell you.
hold on, let me make my point. That if you
Made your point.
No,
it
I
takes
didn't.
You too
no,
long.
I didn't.
Make your point.
Well,
okay.
I can argue the same thing about you. So if you take
yes,
if
you could.
if you tell a journalist that they cannot chronicle an event and they are apart from those protesters, but legally they're part of it by just being there, you have destroyed the First Amendment freedom of press. You have destroyed it.
I agree. We're on the same page. But you parsed it out. You made a different argument.
No, I didn't.
You said they're apart.
You keep calling Don a co-conspirator. You keep calling Don.
I'm not calling Don anything. I call Don a friend.
They're calling him a co-conspirator.
They are correct.
He's
They're
not.
calling him a co-conspirator.
He's not.
They're saying, let me tell you what there are. Look, for all the people who are watching this, let's at least present this in the fashion so that you can have the discussion about it. They meaning the Justice Department, is saying he left the role of a reporter and he crossed over as a co-conspirator. If you were right factually or are right factually, they have not alleged that, and they can't do that. If they have evidence and presented it to the grand jury where Don is in coordinating this disruption of the service, that is not, I don't think, a bright line that you think you're going to be able to, or that he thinks he's going to be able to jump over.
I just read you all of the reasons that that DOJ and the grand jury felt that he was a co-conspirator. They're BS. All of them are BS. And the Justice Department basically took the grand jury for a ride and didn't explain what journalists do. And because Don Lemon talked to these people ahead of time, that doesn't make him a co-conspirator. It makes him a good journalist. And the DOJ never said that. And what they're trying. Okay, let's get what they're trying to do. They are trying.
What you know what they're trying to do.
They're trying to intimidate the crap out of journalists, journalism, and critics of the Trump administration. That's what they're trying to do.
It's also let's be fair here. They have, and there is a significant contingent who believe that this is what is called what I call the goosey gander rule. They're saying, okay, if the previous DOJ and we, the current DOJ, supported the convictions and the appellate affirmation of convictions under the FACE Act and under the Klan Act, if we did that, then you applied it against abortion clinics, we're going to apply it against churches. And I'm telling you that will resonate with at least 5 U.S. Supreme Court justices based on my reading of their opinions.
Are they that dumb that they cannot distinguish between a protester and a journalist? I don't think they're that dumb.
And what they're going to say is he left the role of a journalist.
How?
By the way, you and I can disagree, but I will guarantee you that knowing the federal government, as my father always used to say, the federal government never brings a case unless there's a snitch or a wiretap. I mean, that was his cardinal rule. I guarantee you there are people, snitches, just like there was during January 6th, just like there is in every single case I defend in federal court. There is a snitch somewhere saying, or a recording of Don saying something that they have construed to make him leave the role of journalist and enter the role of co-conspirator. I would find it hard to believe that they would expose themselves. Although, to your point, look at Lindsay Halligan and look at what happened in Virginia.
Right.
And by the way, Abby Lowell was the one who was defending Tish James, and that was also rejected by the grand jury. And he also ended up getting a judge to dismiss. So it's a long way from over.
The indictment lays out why they say he is a co-conspirator with the protesters. I've read it to you. None of it is true. None of it makes sense. It is.
Well, when you say none of it is true,
give me one
on
thing.
a motion to dismiss, that's not the standard.
I'm not talking about a motion to dismiss. I'm talking about democracy. Give me one thing in what I just read to you. Give me one thing that makes a valid argument that Don is part of the protest. Give me one thing in this thing. You read it. One thing, just one thing.
Let me tell you what their response would be, what I would hear if I was standing in a courtroom. They'd say, for the same reason that we have sentenced in the past grandmothers to prison, to federal prison, for protesting at abortion clinics and using medical necessity.
He's not a protester.
All you're trying to do is take his status as a journalist and cloak him in immunity.
No.
And I agree, there is a judicial protection for journalists. However, I'm telling you that they are alleging that he left the role of a journalist.
Right. And I'm telling you that I read all of the allegations that supposedly make him a co-conspirator. And it's insulting. They're lies. They know it. It's not true.
But then again, you keep going back to lies. You don't get to
they put it all here.
Judge,
they put it all in here.
But the federal judge doesn't start looking at it.
I'm not talking
second guess the grand jury.
What I'm talking about is you got a Department of Justice that is trying to get Don Lemon, is trying to make this case, is trying to argue that if you cover a protest that Donald Trump's administration doesn't like, then we're not looking at you as a journalist. By covering it, we're going to make you a protester and we're going to prosecute you. They are trying to intimidate the press. The way they got a search warrant against the Washington Post reporter, the way Pete Hegseth is saying you're only going to report what I say you can report. That's what the Trump administration is doing. They are trying to undermine the First Amendment freedom of speech.
And all I'm
that's what they're
telling you
doing.
Is that the weaponization of criminal law did not start. It wasn't just 60 seconds ago.
Yeah, but
it just depends on whose ox is getting gore. Well, look, as somebody who's been in the trenches for 40 plus years and actually grew up around it for the 30 or 20 years before that, I will tell you that one of the wonderful things about what is happening in stretching the criminal law against people who had no problem with it before is you get to see the absurdity of it, and it points to prosecutorial discretion. How many times have you heard me invoke the former chief judge of the Ninth Circuit who said there isn't a single adult male walking around in California who an enterprising U.S. attorney couldn't find 3 violations of Title 18 on? So that's the reality of it. That's if you want to use the federal criminal law to punish people, you can do it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And by the way, I know you're right, and I agree with you. I mean, let's just talk about what you're talking about. I think trying Donald Trump in the Stormy Daniels case was just a political case that was ridiculous, never should have been brought. I agree with that. I think it's a stupid-ass case. And I think Letitia James running for attorney general saying, I'll prosecute Trump if I get elected, is appalling. I agree.
And go back. But you're old enough to remember, I thought Whitewater was appalling. No, I sat there in an Arkansas federal court saying this is the most insane thing I've ever seen in a criminal courtroom.
But the reaction should not be, you screwed me, I'm going to really screw you. And that's what you're talking about.
That's exactly what has happened over the last 30 years. And I bet you if you went back farther, you could find the genesis of it for 50 years. I mean, we are just watching this pendulum swing of using the criminal law to punish political enemies. That's what happens.
But the problem with, look, and I hear you, but there's a difference between political enemies and journalists who piss off the administration, because all journalists piss off the administration. All of them do. And so here you have a case where they are trying to weaponize this is what's going on right now, is
By the way,
they are going after journalists who oppose Donald Trump. And this is really dangerous.
Do you remember a journalist during the Biden administration who had their offices searched, who for having possession of a diary? Do you remember any of that?
Yeah.
It happens on each side. Each side does this. The idea, I always laughed with the number of lawyers who resigned at the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division when Harvey came in there. I used to say, well, where were all of you guys when I was representing Lady Sweet, the widow of Daniel Shaver, who was murdered in a hotel hallway? Where was the Department of Justice then vindicating his rights? The Department of Justice it works at a glacial pace, and it also always seems to have my little 2 cents always seems to have some kind of a political agenda.
It's really interesting, isn't it, that the DOJ has got their panties in a bunch over a dozen protesters going into a church, but they call a mob that breaks the glass in the Capitol, injures police officers, some of them die as a result of all of this, and look to hang Mike Pence that they're patriots. I'm sorry, but it's hard to swallow.
I don't disagree with you, Harvey. I got a heart out.
I'm pissed, man. I got to go too because I got to go rest.
Okay, take a nap.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, Harvey. Good to see you. Thank you.
See ya.